don't worry about, all the stuff around you, and all the drama going on. Just do your job. If your job is school, do the best you can. Go to class, do the best you can. If you're gonna play basketball, you better practice and be the best basketball player you can be.
Yeah.
And don't listen to all the naysayers surrounding you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Raising Excellence. My name is Mike Friedman, and I'm here with Bryan Nipe, who is the Director of Economic Development for the city. And Bryan, so glad to have you on today, my friend. We've known each other for many, many years. So one of the things I did when I started the podcast back a while ago, you were definitely on the hit list of people I wanted to get in and really get your understanding from a different perspective, raise excellence in kids and families, kind of the way the city looks at that and the role that they play in all of that. And I think a lot of people don't really look at that, and I think it's an important angle.
It takes community, obviously, and Lake Mary is a great community. I have the pleasure of not only having economic development, but also parks and recreation as a department, two departments, and they really work well together. Economic development really relies on a beautiful, well-run city to lure in new business, and a lot of the reasons businesses locate in Lake Mary, people want to live here, is because it's a great place to be. Especially when we're looking at Fortune 500 companies, trying to lure them in. The top executives are looking at it, not just business-friendly communities like we are, but also where's a great place to live? Where am I going to raise my children? And Lake Mary, we pride ourselves as being the spot for that.
Yeah, definitely. And I can attest to that personally. I know when we were looking at moving our business and looking at where we want to kind of place our roots in permanently, there was a lot of different local areas, a martial arts school, anywhere within about 10-mile radius is pretty good. We said no. Lake Mary was obviously the number one choice for us. It was where we wanted, to buy our land, build our building, and make it really a legacy. I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of like your background, so people who don't know you, get a little bit of understanding about who is Bryan and really what got you into first, Parks and Rec, and then eventually wanting to get into the next phase of being the economic director of the city. So,
Well, I grew up in South Florida, modest means, family didn't have a lot of money, but was lucky enough to be at a time where there were still woods and places to go as a kid down there,
yeah,
run around and get lost and not come home until the dinner bell was rang. And so it was a great way to grow up. But I also was fortunate that my family had roots here in Central Florida, where we had two different dairy farms. My mom actually grew up on a dairy farm in Geneva, right down the road. My grandmother
okay,
actually owned a little bit of property in Lake Mary. So my mom grew up on a dairy farm. Tough way to live, growing up on the dairy farm, raising cows in the morning, going off to school at Seminole High, going back, doing her homework, milking the cows again at night, and then going to bed and then waking up doing the same thing every day. So I think I learned a lot of work ethic from her and the stories that she told. But I was lucky enough to come up here and experience some of that and hose out the manure and things like that, and the summer times out of the stables at the dairy farm. It also, in a lot of ways, really kind of raised me. But I was fortunate to have those experiences, and fast forward through my sports experiences through high school
yeah.
and playing football and wrestling and things like that. Pretty competitive down there. I went off to Florida State and didn't really know what I was
Who
going to do.
knows?
Go knows. Didn't know what I was going to do with myself. Didn't know what I was going to study until junior year, where all of a sudden I did real well in economics, and who would have thought? And kind of
Yeah.
left on. Finished up my degree in economics, went back to South Florida, got a job, a really cool job, working for an engineering company down there. And they sent me out as this young 21-year-old out in the Everglades to do data sampling of animals and plants and things like that, working with a biologist. I was
Huh.
not biologist. It had nothing to do with that, but I
That's
was
a
really
far
good with
cry from
spreadsheets,
economics, right?
for sure. Spreadsheets, analysis, all that kind of stuff, data sample. That was my wheelhouse. So I go out with a biologist out in the woods in the Everglades, take all the information they gave me, go back and do the recording and things like that. And really, I learned a ton from this biologist. And then actually, I was in the landscape architecture department. That was at Calvin Giordano Engineering, and learned a little bit from the landscape architect. And I decided, you know what, maybe my next move will be getting my master's. So I went master's in landscape architecture, and that's how the sort of economic development and parks and recreation kind of had a little nexus there. And my next steps eventually just found me in parks and recreation. Didn't know I was going in that direction. Parks and recreation found me, basically designing parks, building new facilities and trails and all kinds of things in Seminole County, and
Yeah.
then Lake Mary, and I eventually, after a few years, after really selling the city as the director of Parks and Recreation, talking about how beautiful it is, what we offer, and all these different things, I was given the opportunity to also take on economic development. So there, kind of all came full circle. And here I am. I have two departments, and it's been a blessing. I'm having a great time. I'm 14 years. Oh, it's been 14 years since I've known you, since you had your first establishment in the Lake Mary Plaza on Country Club, and then
Yeah.
appreciated you sticking around and really investing in Lake Mary on Reinhardt. And you're one of the first on Reinhardt to have facilities on the retail, at least, and services on the west side of the road. Then came Orlando Health and
That's right.
Advent, and it's just grown exponentially. And you were, an initial contributor there, so we appreciate that.
Absolutely. And I'd like to just think that we were the catalyst for the whole uh health
If
and
it weren't for
wellness
you,
for
Orlando Health would
maybe
not
it
have
was
built that
us that brought
hospital.
in Orlando Health. I don't know. As Chevy tried it. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that was definitely humble beginnings for us. I remember we moved over from that little strip mall and didn't know what we were doing. Just literally just bought that piece of land on Reinhardt and went vertical. And now, now we have a legacy that we can really be able to look back on over generations. We're going to be here a long, long time. And so that was really that was why we did it. And, but yeah, like I said, I mean, there was no other place that we want to do it other than Lake Mary. I mean, that was it. That was where our, family is. That's where we put down roots, and it's a permanent thing for us. And so we're all about, obviously, like investing back into the community, not just that way, but really through our kids. And really that's the future. And so again, I appreciate you coming on today. And some of the things that you talked about, I want to kind of unpack that a little bit, because it was interesting, and I didn't even know this about you. I've known you so long, but I didn't know about your beginnings about, in farming and things like that. And, that's something that, we hear sometimes, people, mumblings, that, it's getting too busy around here, and, they don't have the farms anymore. It's just too much and too much traffic. Like, and I know this isn't about, necessarily about, raising excellence in youth, this particular question, but I'm just curious about, for my own, edification. What does the city usually say about that?
Usually say about the outdoors and getting out.
Well, as far as, some people will say, the farming's out there is much more, maybe, too much traffic. And so a lot of concerns about that, you know? So
Well, in terms of the city of Lake Mary, that's it's not an agricultural. It hasn't historically hasn't been an agricultural city for some time. The way it was developed early on in the 70s, which not that long ago, really 1973 was incorporated. It was all
yeah,
is all based around the advent of I-4. I-4 came in, and the earlier leaders said, we got to do something now.
right,
We got to put a code of ordinances. We got to vote in some commissioners and come up with a plan for the future, because this is going to develop out. So knowing that even though there were some pastures and some moderate amount of farmland back then, not a huge amount, but the advent of I-4, really everybody knew that Lake Mary was going to develop out quickly. And so what happened was, a lot of leaders got together and said, let's make sure Lake Mary develops right. Let's make
yeah,
sure that we have a headquarter area for our Fortune 500 over by I-4, where it should be on the west side. And then on the east side of I-4, let's have like a manufacturing district, and let's make sure that that's where it's going to be, the manufacturing, and then healthcare corridor over where you are. And let's
right,
keep all that density, in that area. And then let's call the rest of it to the east much more moderate, with regard to residential and retail and really in like the downtown Lake Mary and Midtown. And that's really, those different districts create what really creates a really nice place to live in Lake Mary.
yeah.
And
And
knowing
I,
you can come here and you can work here. My wife and I don't leave. It's like we live in a bubble here. We really enjoy it.
right. I'm
And
the same
restaurant.
way. I'm the same way. It's funny. I bought a car about 3 years ago, and literally it has 30,000 miles on it. I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't ride anywhere.
me
It's
too.
awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah, like, when you mention that, it's just so awesome. You think about that. So, really it's been around about 40 plus years, city, which is unbelievable when you think about like you said, like where it started and where we are now. At what point did and this is just my own understanding because I'm fascinated by this, but the actual planning when you actually put it into when the city leaders came, got together and said, listen, we're going to make these different pods, these different sections of the city, like you described. How did that come about? Like, how far along of that was that in that planning of the history of Lake Mary?
I think there's always been a
Just kind of
general,
ongoing,
it's a general vision initially, because the early leaders didn't necessarily know it was going to look like this today, but there was a general vision of, we know there's a big highway coming through. We love it here. We want to keep quality of life for our future. And
right?
so, that being said, hire the best of the best, in the planning world, the engineering world, and and then the park people and stuff like that, and make sure that we do it right. Make sure that we give them a vision. We say, this is what we want. You went to school and you got your degree for this. So please help us get there. And so it's a really good partnership between elected officials and professionals over time. And really, it's always been that vision of
Yeah,
keeping a beautiful community in place, and a place where we can raise our kids, and our kids want to come back and live here and raise their
right.
kids, and that full cycle. And I think Lake Mary's been very successful with that.
And I'm just fascinated by that whole process because, I'm sure, some of when you have your closed door meetings and things like this, I'm sure that there's certain, that there's discussions about other cities, right? And this is a kind of a model that we like, or we take inspiration from. And this is one that we're not really crazy about. So I'm just fascinated by how all these things develop.
Well, and over time, West Palm was one. Clematis Street down in West
Mhm.
Palm was an inspiration. Park Avenue in Winter Park, an inspiration. Some areas of Fort Lauderdale, Coral Gables, all well planned areas where you don't let developers run the show. You need
Right.
develop. But you want the right development. You want the right developers to come in.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
good example of that is like Midtown Griffin Farms, where we were losing basically one of our last little farms, little
Yeah.
cow pen. And the owners, the Griffins, basically said, Listen, city, we want to work with this developer. Obviously they're going to make some money off of it, but we want it done right." So
Right.
there was a plan in place based on what the Griffins wanted. And the city kind of took that information and said, okay, we're going to create a planned use development PUD with this developer, and it has to be developed this certain way, and sort of like a walkable mini city, with nice places to live in those city homes. And then you got like the First Watch, and then you got the grocery, and you've got
Yeah.
24
Yeah. Yeah.
fitness. But you have all of that. This little
Right.
mini city, this really cool mixed use area, and really came to fruition. And it's all that's a pretty cool story in itself.
It is. I've heard, and of course I'm there all the time. I love it. When you look at one of the things I know Lake Mary has done just such an amazing job of is just creating all, like you said, all these little green spaces. It's really cool. I know that the pickleball courts, there's so much there. And then I'd like to just kind of pick your brain a little bit about how much when we talk about having, families, work, live, play in Lake Mary. I mean, how much of that when you look at the developmental stages of a child and a family, like how much of that was a consideration and the way you built and designed it for a lot of these spaces?
Well, from early on, I mean, our sports complex was put into place back in the 80s, late 80s. Tree-lined streets, parks in almost like a walkable scenario to every neighborhood has always been important. Having our central park, kind of our own little Central Park, New York, like Frederick Law Olmsted created back in the 1800s, where nobody was doing that, and they created
Right.
a park that was a third the size of Manhattan. That was important to be able to buy up 3 square blocks, and create a central park where everybody can gather.
Right.
So that is our our charged place where everybody gets together routinely. Obviously, we have other parks throughout the city, but that one is that central hub where everybody knows they can go, and there's gonna be a farmers market on a Saturday.
Right.
We're gonna freeze up at the at the Christmas time and holiday time of the year. Parents know that they can safely come pick up their kids when they walk over the pedestrian bridge from Lake Mary Elementary. Come to the park, and I'll meet you there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I witness that on a daily basis at 2 p.m. But then,
Yeah.
then our sports complex and our different recreational facilities, and we have Liberty Park and natural areas, but our sports complex has always been that sort of incubator. We're a sports community, whether or not we don't have a baseball team yet in Orlando or a football team. We've got the Magic are doing great, but we are a sports area, especially for youth, and
Big time.
our sports complex is that incubator, and that spawned Lake Mary Little League and winning the world champions a few years back. But outside of our little Lake Mary bubble, we have Seminole County, which is one of the biggest sports tourism areas and a huge draw at Boomba Sports and different things like that. But we like to think that we contribute to all that by being that early incubator before the kids go off and do travel ball.
Yeah. 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 I mean that, and it's when I'm listening to you talk about this, I think of one word, that really sums it all up. That I'm thinking probably was at a lot of the heart of the decision making, right? When creating all of these, like the farmers market and all these, and when you're talking about creating that one spot downtown, and the word I'm thinking of is connection. And I feel like that was probably so missed. I know in communities across the country, but especially ours, where it's so, you have such a great area and a great nucleus to do all that, to bring people together. And all of a sudden, when it's stripped away, like, how bad did that affect us locally, just from your estimation, as far as like the connection and kids being really hurt emotionally by not being able to take advantage of all these things like we normally do?
Yeah, I think that, well, I think that going back to COVID days and things
Yeah.
like that, where kids lacked that social interaction for a good period of time and were glued to their computers, and that was what they were doing their homework, and their friends were maybe on a phone or something like that, but that was it. And I think that that had an impact on kids at the time. My daughter's 12, and so at the time she was in first grade, something like that, and she, it was not easy on her. And we as parents, we were worried, Jesus, is she going to come out of this? It's going to be, is the world going to be totally different? Well, they
Yep.
all came back. Obviously, we're in good shape overall in America and here in Lake Mary, but the connectivity is cool, Mike, because we have we have great roads that create the connections, and then you trickle down from there. We have great trails, pedestrian
Yeah.
trails,
Yeah.
connections with sidewalks and things like that. But what's really neat is downtown Lake Mary. We're doing a lot of different things. You mentioned pickleball. We built pickleball courts. We built some other new parks in the downtown, but we're also working on a streetscape on Country Club, which is going to create that. It's already a road connection, but now it's going to be that multimodal connection that includes pedestrians. It's not an afterthought. It's going to be these wide
Okay.
sidewalk and
Very cool.
shaded corridors with more trees and
Mm.
just creating that sense of place, but also a safe way to get back and forth. If you're living 6 blocks away from, say, the downtown and some of the restaurants, and you want to get to Lighthouse, you want to walk. Right now
Yeah.
maybe you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
much because especially during the day, because there's not enough trees and shade. But our next steps are really to ensure that like the downtown continues to grow and create that pedestrian connection.
And I think that's so important, being that, like, we're heading into this, it's a screen heavy world, right? And that's not going anywhere. So this provides just a really good, like, alternative and a counterbalance to all that, right? Like getting out and making the connection, being in nature, kind of like what you said. I was just kind of going back to when you were a kid and you were growing up and you had all these awesome memories, right? Of being outside and on the farm and all that stuff. So is this some of this, would you say that it's kind of personal too? Like you're just trying to like pull it in there and get it done?
Yeah, I think so. I'm doing these things for the community, and that's my job as a professional. But at the end of the day, I also look at it from what's my daughter going to think about this, and how is this going to benefit her in the long run? Because I mean that's my inspiration, and so just an example, I brought her and my assistant director Jill, who you've met, Jill Cemento.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I brought my daughter out to look at a park and then I showed her some pictures of playgrounds and what, what she would prefer. And the park has already built this new playground and very shaded and everything. It's, you know, kept the environmental look. And Jill did the same thing with her nephew, and they both picked the same one separately. They both picked the same
Wow. Okay.
playground.
Yeah.
Okay, it was like 1 out of 10 choices, and we didn't want to be the ones to make the choice. We wanted these, 6-year-old, 7-year-old kids to make the choice for us, and they did, and they chose,
Right.
and now we hear all the time, this is every other kid's favorite playground. Well, you or I may not be able to pick that. We would have been like, well, old school steel slide that gets really hot. Let's get on that. But
Oh, right. 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 Yeah. But really, it's for them. And I just think I personally think that's just one of the big things that I think is really missing from say, and I think so many people know it. Like they know the kids got to get outside more. They know they have to connect. They know have to give exercise, all these things. Right. But I think that us locally, maybe in the community, I think a lot of times we just take it for granted. The kind of city we live in and the kind of focus and sacrifice everyone makes from the top down to make sure all these things are there for us, to make sure that everybody's connected well and kids go up the right way and develop the right way. I mean, I think it's a big piece of it.
yeah, well, it's all about community.
Yeah.
It's not it's not just government making things happen. It's like businesses are set here, and then people begin to live here, and then the
Yeah.
people want certain amenities. The people want nice places to eat and nice place, easy ways to walk to dinner
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Sure.
take to parks. So it's just we're doing what our community wants, and and we know that we're because of the feedback we get.
With that being said, I wanna also talk about, like, obviously you have to talk about some of the darker sides and the security and it's different things that really come up that I know you guys, talk about in your discussions. And I want to play a little news piece from some of the things that have been going on in Central Florida lately around, the public gatherings and some of the things that I'm sure you're pretty familiar with.
But you're talking about flash mobs and things like that, where these kids are all showing up in force. I've seen them. I've seen them. I know what you're talking about.
Okay, okay. All right. We talk about like some of the violence that happens at these events. And I know this, we have so many of them in Lake Mary. We have so many awesome, beautiful events where families come out. And, you know, obviously there are events all over the city, all over different cities, all over the country. And so I want to get your take on that, because some of the violence that's going on with kids, like some of these mass, like there's 100 kids coming out and just wreaking havoc in these areas. And it's like, man, it just from in about 10 different levels, it just hurts me. And so I think there's a lot of people that look at that, and then there's a real visceral response when you look at this stuff, right? And so, but sure, just I don't know. I just want to I want to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. There's been it's a popular thing now. The flash mob thing, and they show up at parks or beaches, and it's Orlando, Daytona have been a couple of them. I think there's two ways to look at this. One, we have events throughout the year, and when we plan our events, we come up with incident action plans that involve our police and fire departments, and that is utmost important that everybody's on the same page. And these plans are in the case that anything happens during an event. There's
Right,
shooters in the world, there's flash mobs, but there's somebody could come out and try to run a path through people with a van or something like that. We prepare for everything. Um, that said, we're prepared during an event. During a non-event, when we have a park that's an open space and it's public, anybody's allowed to come, but you come and you treat people with respect and you respect the space. You don't trespass in areas you're not supposed to be and things like that. We're lucky enough that we're in a small community where police department, their patrol, I think anytime you're driving around town, is not a time you don't see them at pretty much every corner,
yes,
which makes me
great,
feel makes our community feel good. And we're also, have a great relationship with Seminole County Sheriff. And if anything goes down, it's squashed quickly. If there's something coming out where there's a riot of sorts or anything like that,
right,
a peaceful protest or something, but something where there's violence and mayhem, between our police is on it right away. And then if we need the assistance of the sheriff, they're great partners and happy
right,
to assist.
right, right.
And so anything like that is quelled immediately.
What's your thoughts on I guess kind of how these things start, how they develop, where they would come from in the beginning. I mean, we haven't seen these things 20 years ago. I don't remember it anyway. We see these now. I mean, what is like
Well,
what would you
I
what are your
would
thoughts?
20 something 30 years ago, I don't know, when I was in high school, I remember these random folks would plan raves or something like that. And you'd
Yeah.
hear there
Yeah,
a
yeah.
rave weekend. And I wasn't a rave guy, but I knew that there were all of a sudden you get a word like there were notes passed around at school or there was a poster that was put on
Yeah.
some places and you wouldn't know where it was going to be until this date and then it would pop up and all of a sudden it shows up. And that would be how they would have aided police knowing that they should
Right.
go bust this event, this illegal event happening in some warehouse. Nowadays, you know this, social media allow the communication through social media is sometimes they try to evade police in various ways where they go from a TikTok to I don't even know now. And there's so many
Uh,
different social that kids are using. Luckily, law enforcement and our PD keeps its sights on all of the social media sites and they know all the ones that are out there
yeah.
and if FBI gets involved even locally where if they're hearing something that is negative connotation if there's something that's going to go on they're seeing that this weekend all these people are planning on converging in this park or this beach or whatever they let local law enforcement know hey this is coming you might want to make a plan for it
Right,
and
right,
usually
right.
it works where we're we get emergency reports that something's going to happen but I'm not sure what's happened recently in the Daytona and Orlando. I think that there were kind of thousands of people in a big large space and maybe some of the PD were overwhelmed in those spaces, but I'm pretty confident in our law enforcement over here that that stuff's not going to happen.
Oh yeah. I mean, I am too. It just breaks my heart when I look at youth and I look at them going in that direction and there's arrests made, there are records, they're going to follow these kids for a long, long time. And so I know that Lake Mary, I think it just does an amazing job at one, providing not only, the community and the outlets to go out and do things outside, but, like you had mentioned, youth sports and everybody is, Lake Mary is a very, very close knit, I feel, very, very close knit. And so maybe that's part of it. Maybe in some of the larger cities that they struggle with trying to make the connection, it's easier for these things to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Very possible. And you've got larger populations, larger spaces too. It's kind of hard to control, large Orange County Fairgrounds or something. Everybody shows up on that, and
Yeah.
you got
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
kid. What do you do with them? And are they trespassing or are they not trespassing? Are they being peaceful? Great, but a couple fights break out or somebody brings some guns, and like say
Yeah.
what? And it can be scary.
And that's another good case for just staying local. I mean, everything's right here pretty much, right?
Don't leave Lake Mary.
Right. Is that now just I'm just curious for my own understanding. Just kind of like going back to the planning, you hear a lot of communities being planned like with that work, live, and play kind of thought. Is that that's the idea for Lake Mary, even
Yeah,
going
I
into the
mean,
future?
that theme or that is somewhat cliched, the work, live, and play, but no, it's all in laid out in different terms. You know, we're live here, work here, and play here. Live here because we've got great places to live,
Yeah.
whole communities. Start your business here, work here because we're business friendly. You know, you know that you've got the transportation hubs. You know that you've got Sanford Airport right down the street, or OIA if you need to get that way. We've got Sunrail, our Sunrail station in Lake Mary. So and business friendly, we make sure our planning department, community development, gets them to the ribbon cutting as quickly as possible. And then play here, yeah, we've got everything you need in terms of a small community, in terms
Yep.
of recreation and parks and places to be and events throughout the year. And it's small town America. It's what you'd see somewhere in New England maybe. But we're
Yeah.
live, work, play. It's all in the nuts and bolts of our of everything that's been planned over time. Live, work, play is cliched, but hey, we're living it for sure.
One of the things we always talk about when we're looking at raising excellence in youth and just getting kids, asking them, inviting them into a space really to be the best version of themselves. I think that's what we're talking about, creating these physical spaces. When we're talking about an emotional space present for them to step in and be the best version. But what you're really talking about is really like a physical space for people to step in and connect and really be better and have shared experiences at a higher level. And so, I really like that. And, one of the things I think that is really missing from a lot of activities and where people are at nowadays is a structure. We have a saying, structure breeds discipline. So one of the things that Lake Mary does such an amazing job as really is keeping things structured, keeping, like you said, the event structured, the calendar structured. And that's one of the things I've even noticed in the past, 10, 15 years. And I'm sure that's probably, your fingerprints all over that, right? Parks and Recs and Parks and Recreation, how that was developed and kind of, and how it came to be. Can you talk a little bit about when you're planning events, when you're planning spaces, like how important is that structure to the whole process?
I think, well, in a lot of levels. I mean, you talked about the safe space. If I was to go, which I did, I brought my daughter to your studio, and she'd been in karate for a little while, and that's a safe space. It's a karate studio, yours especially. It's a safe space to go to. We certainly want that. We want everybody to feel that, whatever facility, whether indoors or outdoors. We have a summer camp at our community center that's um, very successful, and we get 99% positive feedback over everything we do, and it's a safe space for kids. And parents know that when the kids go on a field trip, every single counselor has been trained and documented and background checked and all that sort of thing. Same with our senior center. Our seniors know that they're coming to a safe space, and it's that everything is structured in such a way that they're going to have fun, but they know that everything's documented and all I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Everybody's background checked, and the counselors are the best, the dance studio instructors, all that. And then even to like the sports complex where we have the best relationship with Little League. I mean, when I got here, Little League was sort of fizzling, and Babe Ruth was maybe the answer, which is a travel ball more. But we had some really great relationships that we improved on over time with Little League, and we created some structure there. We just have a great relationship with them. We provide a facility, and these are our expectations. They have levels of expectations for the facility, and we make sure we provide the best fields possible and the safest spaces possible. And then they bring in that they see this, and now they have these parents that have come through over time that become coaches and board members, and just that relationship there's no gray area. We're providing this. We want you to be successful, be as successful as you can, raise these kids right on those sports fields. The event center, I mean, I know you've been there before. We have weddings and things like that. It's going on over 17 years old, I believe. It looks brand new. And
Can't believe it's been there that long. It seems like I remember when they built that.
yeah, it's almost 20 years old, really. At the end of the day, it was
Yeah.
finished in 2007, opened in 2008. But we have 200 weddings a year and 100 business meetings a year. Yet our team here makes it. I say here because my office is in the event center. I don't know if you do that. Confines of the cellar somewhere. They keep me hidden. No, I mean, the 200 weddings and 100 business meetings, and our staff keeps it looking like it's still brand new. You walk in here, looks like a brand new building, and that's structure. That's just standard operating procedures, and you have that in place across the board everywhere you go. If you don't, you're not setting yourself up for success across the board.
Yeah, across the board. No, this is what we do here, and this is what we teach kids. And we say that structure breeds discipline. If you don't have a structured day, and you can't compartmentalize your day and your life, you're in trouble, right? And so it's interesting to see the parallel between the way you do things are so successful in the city, and they've been so successful, and that word structure. I think it's something that a lot of people really overlook, because I think a lot of people, and now I'm going to put on my martial arts instructor hat, but I think a lot of people look at that and they get busy in their day-to-day lives. And so, we're always, they take structure and kind of goes out the window a lot of times. And look, what would happen if you did that? What would happen if, to city events, if, we got so busy that we didn't have time to make sure things were safe and structured? Not be a good deal, right? Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we have high expectations for our citizens to do everything right. If they're gonna show up to an event, and when they do show up to an event, they know it's a Lake Mary event. You know, you're not anywhere else. You know that the way it's set up, the vendors and the types of entertainment and all that, and it's a Lake Mary event. You just know it. And
You just
we
know, you
did,
just, and
celebrate Lake Mary, which we had Jake Scott this last year, which is
I
an
was going
over.
to say Lake Mary celebrates.
Like,
Awesome.
yeah, celebrate
Yeah.
Lake Mary, and this was our fourth year, and we had some hiccups with weather the first couple of years, but we stuck with it. And Jake Scott this year, we've had Sister Hazel a couple of years, we've had a couple different really great bands, but when I've been told this specifically for that event, people show up and they see, city staff and they just have, a sense of ease that they're seeing it's city people. It's not necessarily just vendors, and they see firefighters in tents and police officers in tents, not just there because they're waiting for something to happen. They're there because they're doing community outreach.
Right. Want to connect. Sure.
So people just they show up to celebrate Lake Mary, and they're like, this is a Lake Mary event. They see it, they feel it.
I love it. I mean, what we know, one of the things that we like to talk about with our kids is leadership, right? Before you can lead anybody, you have to be able to lead yourself. And so what I'd like to do is see about the parallel we can draw between what strong city leadership looks like and what leadership looks like for a young boy or girl looking at the future and saying, what do I need to do to be a leader? And can you just talk about some of the things it takes to be a successful, some of the traits, like the foundational traits it takes to be a great leader in in what you do for the city?
I think it kind of starts with how you treat people and how you treat your staff. Since I have 12-year-old daughter, I can use that to when I go home, I can talk to her about some of the things that I dealt with during the course of my workday. And she asks me questions. Well, why did you not do this? Or why would you go in that direction? Or, geez, you had to lay somebody off. Why did that happen? And I have to have
Yeah. Like
a hard
real
conversation with
conversations.
somebody
Yeah.
off. Now it's a hard conversation with my daughter,
Yeah.
and it's, well, sometimes people aren't they don't do their jobs, and you have to have that tough conversation with people at times, and it takes a leader to do so. But yeah, it starts with how you treat people, how you treat your staff, and then up from there, it's how you interact with the public, how you interact with
Yeah.
the people that are alongside you, and the other directors and commissioners and the mayor. Navigating politics is not always easy, but if you're doing your job well and you're doing your job right, and you're hearing what the community wants, and you're doing it to the best of your ability, it's easy to navigate politics, because then people are just coming to you and saying, well, why aren't you doing this? Well, because there's a reason for that. Why are you doing this? There's a reason for that. I
Right.
think leadership, it all goes back to, treating people well, treating people right, and fair, really, at the end of the day.
And I really I want to kind of just take a little deeper dive in what you just said about politics, right? Because kids have politics too, right? In their peer groups and in their social circles and schools, right? Like they have politics, but one of the things you just said about politics was, and I hope I'm paraphrasing this right, but you said basically it's just you just do the right thing. You know you have to do, and things are you have reasons why you made decisions. And so politics just kind of goes away, right? And when you're doing the right thing and you're clear and you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, then politics, it makes it a little easier to navigate that, right?
Yeah, I think I'm fortunate in our community. It's sort of everybody seems to be in a similar manner, looking in the same direction, and really almost everybody wants the same thing. Certain our commission, they agree on 5-0 votes, and they have a very similar vision across the board. You know, in terms of politics, politics is dealing with, the entire realm. You can't make everybody happy all the time. And so the biggest part of politics is you have to say no. You
Right.
know, you can't say yes all the time. Your no's
Can't be a
outweigh
yes
your
man. Yeah, you
yeses.
don't get too far,
You
right?
you're
Yeah.
And so that's probably maybe the hardest part of dealing with politics is saying no and getting that pushback or whatever that might be. But at the end of the day, you just you gotta have pretty tough shoulders and a strong just a strong personality to be able to handle that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I want to do a takeaway for youth, and you have a young daughter, and my son is at least he's 19 now. He's still a young man. What advice would you give? Like, what advice would you give to a teenager navigating everything that they're navigating in today's world, all the pressures, everything out there? If you had to give them one or two tips that they can carry with them to be super, super successful,
You
knowing
know,
what
I
you know and being involved with the community to the level that you are, what would you say?
it's maybe they don't have a job
Yeah.
at whatever they're a teenager, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But do your job. Don't worry about, all the stuff around you, and all the drama going on. Just do your job. If your job is school, do the best you can. Go to class, do the best you can. If you're gonna play basketball, you better practice and be the best basketball player you can be. Don't listen to all the naysayers surrounding you. I think that's definitely a key point. But also as a teenager, this is a temporary portion of your life, and
Right.
as time goes by, you're gonna miss it. So enjoy this time, because before you know it, you're going to be in college. Before you know it, you're going to get out of college and you're going to be married and you're going to have children. Enjoy this time, even though, teenagers are like, "Oh, I can't wait till I'm 18 or I can't wait till I'm 21." Or just enjoy it. Looking back now, I'm in my late 40s, I would, looking at my teenage self at 16, begrudging and all that, I would have knocked that person in the head and said, "Get out there, do your all school
Yeah.
surf, this weekend and have fun, get
Yeah.
your job done and have fun."
Absolutely. Well, look, man, I really appreciate it. I appreciate it, Brian. I appreciate you coming on today. Like I said, we've known each other for a long time. It was really insightful for me to understand you at a different level, and really, and I think for the people watching, really get a really better understanding of the role the city has, especially the city of Lake Mary has in developing excellent youth. Because at the end of the day, it really comes down to more than just families, right? But it comes down to community. And when you're involved in a community like Lake Mary, it goes beyond you have a family really beyond your family. And I think that's one of the things that I think the city's tried to do. I think they definitely hit a home run there. No, there's always challenges, and I think a lot of the challenges really come from sometimes inside, sometimes, just socioeconomic different forces out there. But man, if I had to be on one boat in the middle of the ocean, it would definitely be see Lake Mary. That's why I'm here. So that's why we're here. And I appreciate all the work you're doing, and I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you, Mike, and appreciate all you're doing in the community, and keep up the good work, buddy.
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate it. Everybody, on behalf of Raising Excellence, we've had Bryan Nipe on as the Director of Economic Development for the City of Lake Mary. I'm Mike Friedman with Raising Excellence. And again, to check out all of our other content we have on Raising Excellence, go to the YouTube channel, Champion Karate FL. And we'll see everybody next time. Take care, everybody.